development, picking up on point number 10. Say yes to every opportunity. This is a bad idea. Now, when you're first starting out, it's a good idea to say yes to everything. But I'm assuming not all of you is just starting out right now in what you are doing. Business has seasons. Every business has its seasons. Your career also has its seasons. And by seasons, I mean you have to know when to say yes to certain things and when to be walking away based on the situation. So in episode number 2096, I talked about the 3 seasons of your work and how to manage them. Episode number 398, I talked about the planting and harvesting seasons of your life and of your career. There's a season in which you should say yes to everything because you're relatively, let's say, unknown. You have a light resume and plenty of available time on your hands. I've been in this situation and I said yes to every opportunity that was presented to me. And because I was good, saying yes to all those opportunities led to people coming to me instead of me going to them. And now I was getting more opportunities that were actually better suited to what I was actually looking for. I am a believer in the concept that being known by the right people in business is more important than being good in business. Being known by the right people is more important than being good. Now, of course, you want to be both, but being known produces more results, and we're in a results-based business. I know a whole lot of mediocre people who make a lot of money, even though they're mediocre. Why? Because people know them. The right people know them. And I know a whole lot of good people who are unknown and frustrated. Why? Because nobody knows them. So which one would you rather be? Okay, so there is a time to say yes to opportunities that are presented to you because it might help you build a relationship with the right person. There is also a time when you should be saying no to opportunities because you have moved to another level in which you need to be more selective about what you do. So there comes a time in your career when what people present to you as an opportunity is more of an opportunity for them than it is an opportunity for you. So at some point you have to step up your discernment and decide, okay, these are the kind of opportunities I'm okay with, and these are the kinds that I'm not okay with. I remember I was listening to an author by the name of Benjamin Hardy. He's written several books. His most recent and one is very popular is called 10X is easier than 2X. And one of the things that he talks about is that with his staff, because he's an author and a speaker, he's in a thought leadership space, a similar lane to myself. He gets a lot of requests from people to be on their shows, whether it's a YouTube show, radio show, TV show, podcast, etc. And he said he is always fine-tuning with his staff what types of shows he will go on versus what types of shows he will not go on. And the point being, there are times that he has to say no to people, excuse me, because he's being offered opportunities that he just doesn't feel fit his filter, whatever that may be for him. And he gets to choose that because it's his time that he's giving when he appears on somebody else's show. Because again, they're asking him. So you need to be discerning enough to understand this, and you got to be discerning enough to say no to anything that is not fitting in your filter if and when you get to this point. Now, some of you, if you're relatively new, you say everything. You say yes to everything, rather. And there may be seasons in which you do. Like right now, when it comes to media appearances, I generally say yes to damn near anyone who comes to me and asks me to appear in media for them because I'm getting the word out about Work on Your Game, about Work on Your Game University, et cetera, et cetera. And I have to consider my equation, which may be different than Benjamin Hardy's equation. So you have to know what makes sense to you. And there may come another season where I'm like, well, hey, I'm in the middle of working on a book, I'm working on this project, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that, or maybe I start interviewing people on a show of my own and I decide I'm not going on other people's shows anymore. I'm bringing people on my show. Maybe I'll do that. But you have to know what season it is for you, and you need to know what your parameters are for how you make decisions, which will help you save a ton of time anytime a request comes across your desk. Moving on to point number 11. Topic again here is part 4 of our 5-part series, Biggest Lies You've Been Told When It Comes to Professional Development. Number 11, all feedback is constructive. This one is not true just on its face. Now, I would think that most of the time when someone offers you feedback, they consider it to be constructive because they want to be heard, regardless of what they're saying, even if they're saying something that you consider to be nonsense. So you can get feedback from all types of people from all different sources. Just because someone can offer feedback does not mean that it is credible, nor does it mean that you should listen. Especially in our world today when anyone can offer feedback on damn near anything that anybody else does. As long as someone's online and accessible, you can offer them feedback. You can post something, you can say something, you can leave a comment, you can send them a DM. You might have to be able to find their phone number. Maybe you had their business address. You can show up at their office. Anyone who makes themselves available on the internet can be commented to or communicated with. Now, whether they respond or not is a different story, but you can try to communicate with damn near anybody who's online. And at the same time, anyone who's online can communicate with you if you make yourself available. That doesn't mean everything that anyone says to you is credible. It doesn't mean everything that anyone says to you is constructive, nor does it mean is useful, nor does it mean you should even listen to it in the first place. So this is where you have to be, again, discerning about who and what you are listening to. And again, in our world today, anybody can offer feedback as long as you're available. So a comment, a DM, email, text message, phone call, physical visit, there's no guarantee that the sources that are sending you feedback, whatever that feedback may be, no guarantee that they know anything about which they speak, nor is there any guarantee that they're offering you anything that would actually be useful, even if you were to listen to it. Now, this at the same time, this is where the discernment comes in, folks. This doesn't mean that you should ignore all feedback just because it's feedback, because sometimes someone will offer you a critical piece of feedback that is constructive and it is useful if you would listen to it and you would take heed to it. Now, again, this requires you to be discerning, but also requires you to have thick skin, and you got to have good parameters for what you are listening to and why and what you're looking for, and also be able to discard anything that is not substantial for you, even if the person, again, has very strong feelings about what they want to say. Some of my best ideas when it comes to content creation, or when it comes to stuff that started out maybe on the content level, but then moved me up to the paid level, came from me engaging in the commentary with people who I do not know. And I have no idea if they have any credibility, so to speak, to be offering me advice on certain things. But I had the mind to where I can take a piece of feedback from a person who has no experience in an area, but because of what they said or how they said it, I can alchemize that into a different idea that becomes something that I actually benefit from. So the first product that I ever created was a $5 training program for basketball players. And I started selling it immediately. The day that I announced it, it immediately started selling. The idea for making that product came from a comment on YouTube from a nameless, faceless person who said, well, Dre, if you can't make programs for us individually, why don't you just make one program that shows what you personally do and then let other people follow your program? And I said, that makes perfect sense. I'm going to sell it. And I started selling it for $5. Who gave me that comment? I doubt that the person who gave me that comment was an entrepreneur. I doubt they had an online business. I doubt they were at the same level I was professionally as a basketball player. However, their idea was useful, and I was able to turn it into a business opportunity. And that's literally the first thing I sold on the internet was that, or the first thing I sold that was my own creation. I had sold stuff on eBay, but first thing I sold that I created was that. Now, where'd that come from? Me being willing to listen to nameless, faceless people because there might be a good idea in there. Now, again, let's be clear. I wasn't just browsing through anybody's comments. I was reading my own comments of my own audience and my own fans. And that's where I got the idea from. So the fact that I stayed open to that gave me opportunity. And to this day, I still read comments. I still respond to comments on my content. I don't really get involved in other people's stuff, except on X. I will get involved in other people's stuff. But on every other app, you'll never see my name in other people's comments. You'll only see me in the comments to my stuff, because I do respond to people in comments on some apps, so not on all of them. So some of them I don't go back and forth, but some of them I will at least respond on the first level, and a lot of them. TikTok, I don't do anything on TikTok. I post there, but I don't do anything else. I don't engage in the commentary. When I'm doing live streams, for example, if someone's watching my live stream and they're engaging, I will respond back to them. I'll talk to them right there in the live stream. Any of you watching me go live, you know that I do. I will talk to people directly. And there are people who are members of Work on Your Game University to this very day who found me through commentary. Found me just through comments, through talking to me in comments or watching a live stream or something like that. So this works for me. This might not work for you, but you have to be willing to try things out to find what makes the most sense for you. So not all feedback is constructive, while at the same time doesn't mean you should ignore all feedback, because there might be a gem in there that that otherwise would have went unnoticed had you not been paying attention. Point number 12. Today's topic, once again, is we're talking the biggest lies you have been told about professional development. Number 12. Always be available and ready for others. This is only true in certain businesses, when being immediately available has financial benefits or is the crux of your business. So this point here is, again, about your availability. Like, if someone was to call my phone right now while I'm in the middle of recording, I could see on my phone who it is and that they're calling, and I could even know who they are and want to talk to them. I'm not going to stop my recording and talk to this person, because unless we had a scheduled call, I ain't stopping what I'm doing to take your phone call. Now, I'll call you back, or I'll listen to your message and see what you say, but I'm not going to stop everything I'm doing to talk to anybody who calls me at an unscheduled time unless it's an emergency. And there's only a handful of people I count on one hand who could call me with an emergency. And most people who have called me my last 20 incoming calls, ain't none of them an emergency. It might be an emergency for them, not an emergency for me. All right, that's a different thing. So being available and ready for others as a professional is not necessarily needy, and it also may start throwing your life and schedule off. As a matter of fact, I was just talking a few weeks ago. I was talking to a sales team down here in Miami. They had brought me in to consult, talk to them about some things. And one of the things that their sales people were saying after I did a little bit of speaking stuff that I had prepared, and then I started taking questions. And a lot of the salespeople were talking about how their clients are often calling the salesperson during the day, because they have these long sales cycles, and they call them during the day with different stuff and different needs, and what to the client is an emergency, and the salesperson ends up tending to that emergency, and therefore their own schedule, what they were supposed to be doing, gets thrown off, and they're not catching up on their follow-ups. They're not calling new prospects as often, and they're finding themselves getting behind and not making sales the way that they're supposed to, because they're allowing the emergencies, quote unquote emergencies, of clients and prospects to interrupt their process. And I explained to them, same thing I'll tell you, is that you need to set the ground rules with the people who are working for you, even though they have access to you. That doesn't mean they immediately get you just because they call or they send a text message. I let people know, if I am coaching you, I am not the police. I am not the EMS. I'm not the emergency medical system. I'm not the firefighter. So if you have an emergency, you should be dialing 911. Do not dial my phone. If you have an emergency, what am I going to do? And now, if you have something you need to talk with me about business-wise, you can send me a message, and you know the proper channels. Anyone who works with me has the proper channel through which to reach me, and they get told in what time frame they should expect to hear back from me. And guess what? It ain't immediately. Just because you sent me a message does not mean I'm going to immediately respond to you back, because I'm not in that line of work. Now, if I was, let's say, for example, let me give you some examples where this does matter. If I was a bail bondsman, then I probably need my phone to be on at all times, all right? Because if somebody calls, they probably need to get someone bailed out of jail like now. Like, they're not waiting for a call back 2 days from now. They want to hear from you immediately. If you're a plumber who can go and fix a broken pipe in the toilet and the whole bathroom is flooded, you probably need to be available right now. If you're an exterminator who can catch a raccoon that's in somebody's attic, then you probably need to be available right now. And your fees should be a reflection of your immediate availability. Remember, I knew this girl in college. She was post grad, so she was a little bit, I think it was my senior year, and she was maybe a year or two out of college, or out of the 4-year degree program. I think she was in some kind of whatever you call it after you graduate, but you're still in school. No, I didn't do that, because I don't even know what it's called. But anyway, she was in the medical industry, and I remember she had this pager, because I was at her place overnight, and she had a pager, and she put it right next to the bed on a nightstand. And she said, if this pager goes off, I have to get up and go like immediately. I have to immediately go to wherever I'm going. She told me that ahead of time before we went to sleep. And luckily the pager didn't go off, but she still had to get up at like 4 or 5 in the morning. And I had to get up too, because I had to leave, and I had to go back to where I was at, and she had to go to work wherever she was. But the line of work that she was in, she was on call. She wasn't a nurse. It was something in the medical space, but she wasn't a nurse. But it was like being on call. So any of you who works in that kind of space and you're on call, you know exactly what it is. Like, that pager goes off or that phone rings, it's not I might get it, or it's okay if I miss the call. Like, it's unacceptable. You can't miss the call. You got to actually go. So if you're in those lines of work, be available at all times for others. And some of you in some lines of work, I know I work with some people in the financial space. They have clients who will reach out to them and they want something immediately, or they make it seem like it's an emergency and they need something immediately. The point that I told those salespeople here in Miami, and the same thing, because I'm actually going to talk to a sales team tomorrow, as a matter of fact, from the day that I'm recording this, I'm going to speak to another sales team, and they're going to have similar issues, is that you need to discern, based on your line of work, what is actually an emergency and what is not. In my line of work, what I do, you have me as a coach, there is no emergency in which you need to speak to me immediately, because there's nothing that could possibly be happening that you need me to immediately respond to you. Maybe on the edges, the fringes of this is maybe if, let's say, an email campaign got scheduled and the wrong email went out or something like that. But that's fixable. That's not an emergency. That's not like a drop everything type of thing most of the time. And anything else, there's nothing else that can possibly happen that you need to talk to me immediately. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to come perform CPR on your dog. I'm not in that line of work. So there's nothing you need me immediately for. So I don't need to be available and at the ready for other people. And as a matter of fact, I'm running my business. So if I'm available and at the ready for you at all times, I must not be doing too much business. All right. Unless you're paying me so much that I can ignore everybody else. All right. That we can discuss. Anyway, so there are some lines of work where this makes sense, and there are many lines of work where it doesn't. Okay. So for one thing, in many businesses, you don't need to be immediately available because that makes you a commodity because you are only chosen because you are the one who answered on the first ring. I don't want to be in that business. I don't want to be in the business of who's the most available, who responds first, because now you're comparing me to other people. I don't want to be in that business. I want to be in a line of work where you're coming to me because you want to work with me, which means if I take a whole day before I get back to you, that's okay because you're not looking around. You're not shopping around. You're not shopping me versus 5 other people. If you're doing that, I say pick one of those 5 because I guarantee at least one of them is going to have a lower price than me. So if you're doing that, pick the lowest price person. Don't pick me because I ain't going to be that. And if I am, then I need to change my prices. All right, so if you ever look at 4 or 5 different options, I got the lowest price, please let me know so I can raise my prices. All right, so do you want to be a person who is sought out, which means people will wait to hear from you even if they can't reach you immediately, if that's what you want, because they want you and only you. Therefore, you don't need to be immediately available because people are coming only for you, which means they got to sit on a waiting list to get access to you. That's okay. All right, is that the kind of business you want to have? Is that the kind of person you want to be? If so, you got to put the pieces in place to make that a reality. It's not something that's just going to randomly happen to you. All that said, folks, let me recap. Today's class was part 4 of our what will be 5-part series on biggest lies you've been told about professional development. Number 10, say yes to every opportunity. Not true. Business has seasons. Your careers have seasons. You need to know when it's the season of saying yes and also when it's the season to say no so you can buckle down and focus on other things. Number 11, all feedback is constructive. Definitely not true in the world of the internet when anyone can say anything, often anonymously. You have to be very discerning about what to listen to and what not to listen to. At the same time, that doesn't mean just dismiss something just because whoever said it is someone that you don't know or they don't have a certain level of credibility. Because as I already told you, one of my best business ideas came from a random person who I do not know, who probably had a little credibility in the space in which they offered me a suggestion, but doesn't mean the suggestion was bad. I took that suggestion, moved it from where it came from to where it needed to be, and I made a lot of money off that suggestion. So be open. Number 12, always be available at the ready for others. This is not true unless you happen to be a plumber or an emergency doctor or a bail bondsman. You should probably answer on the first ring. Everybody else in other businesses, not everybody else, but in many of your businesses, you don't need to be available immediately. You're not saving lives here. You may be doing something like, you may be a moving company or you're selling couches. All right, what emergency could there possibly be? Again, if there's a real emergency, they're calling the cops. They ain't calling you. All right, so you don't need to be available at all times for everybody. And anyway, if you're the person who's being sought out, doesn't matter how long it takes for you to get back to them because they want you anyway. Therefore, they're not going to option B because there ain't no option B. That's where you want to be. My suggestion. Now, if you want to get into that position and you want help with me showing you how to do it and how to structure this, how to organize it, and how to maintain it, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com where you can have me as your direct coach amongst a lot of other perks and bonuses. Again, it was workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre, all